please do tell me if you have any familiarity with Tamora Pierce or, spoilers. Always spoilers for these books that were all published 6 or more years ago. Hello, thank you for clicking, thank you for being here. I'm going to talk about cover art on Tamora Pierce's books. Tamora Pierce is a young adult fantasy author primarily. Most of her books she published between the early 1980s and I think 2018 is when her last published book, most recent published book was. I haven't read that book, but there is a Emmeline-based series and a Tortall-based series. These are 2 fantasy worlds that she's created, and I've read, except for the one, all the books in those 2 worlds, those 2 fantasy series. The book that had been most recently published when I discovered Tamora Pierce was Trickster's Choice. So that's in the Tortall series, and I got all the other quartets before the Trickster's Choice and read those. I read Alana the First Adventure, which was the first published quartet, then I read Protector of the Small, then I read Trickster's Choice, then I read the Immortals series. The Immortals took place between the Song of the Lioness series and the Protector of the Small series. That was my Tortall experience. That was my first Tamora Pierce experience. Fantastic author, fantastic world, fantastic learning as a writer, as a reader. Because there's a focus on craft magic, there's just some there's some education woven with the storytelling. Because those books were all published over multiple decades, there are multiple runs of them. So there's different art styles. The 3rd book in the Song of the Lioness series, this cover art is from the late 1990s. I like this cover art. It features the main character. It features her horse, who is a companion and a tool. She is a lady knight. You see she's got some magic going on, you see she's got a weapon going on, and she's in some sort of arid setting, which is what this story takes place in. The cover tells you about the story before you pick it up. I remember watching an interview a while ago from a while further back. Tamora Pierce hates the title of this book, but I remember the fan who was interviewing her, and I like it. I feel like this title kind of tells you something about this book, The Woman Who Rides Like a Man. In brief summary, Alana disguised herself as a boy for 7 years to earn her shield as a knight. It wasn't illegal for women to be knights, it just wasn't socially accepted. So once she earned her knighthood and then was discovered, they didn't take her knighthood away, but no one really wanted to have anything to do with her, and this is her first solo adventure building her legend. So this art cover, love it, and this is what my Song of the Lioness collection matches this art style. The Immortals. So 1, 3, and 4 that I have in this series match that art style of the late 1990s. It's the same as the Song of the Lioness set that I have. This one, for whatever reason, this number 2 in the series is in the earlier 1990s style. So this is just an example of, again, this illustrative artistic style. I love it, and it tells you something about what's going on with the story. There's something smoky, there's a dragon, she's got wolves, they're friendly enough to touch her, she's got an arrow, it's the winter, kind of, and this is your main character. Again, too, Tamora Pierce, young adult fantasy author, not only female characters, but predominantly female main characters. Just as an example, so this is the second in the Circle Opens quartet. This is Briar's story, and part of the reason I grabbed this one too is for the continuity, okay? Melting Stones. I talked about this one a lot in my first video. You can check that out if you want to. Same character, same character. There's some continuity here, even though there's 2 completely different styles. This is 2002. This is like the last run of when they bothered to get artistic styling that tells you something about the story when you look at the book and pick it up. My favorite character, my favorite series, Protector of the Small, Kelladry. Also, I think 2002. 1999. Continuity, artistic style. There's not a lot going on here, but like this was the beginning of that sort of reduction in style. But you still have continuity. You can tell it's the same character. She's still got her little birds. This is a plot point. This connects her to Alana as Lady Knight. If you read no other Tamora Pierce book, I don't know. I guess you couldn't really dive into this one fairly, but at the same time you could. I love this character. Anyway, getting off topic. Point is talking about the covers. Cover art, artistic style that tells you about the story. 2002. 2003, Trickster's Choice. This is where I first picked up Tamora Pierce. I don't mind this. It's a complete shift, but that's also what was happening at the time. And I feel like a choice was made, an editorial choice was made to no longer budget proper cover art for Tamora Pierce's fantasy. Not in 2003, but a couple of years later, maybe, actually probably almost a decade later, around the time of Melting Stones, maybe a little bit before that, I remember seeing a reprint of Woman Who Rides Like a Man. And it had Alana on the cover with two guys behind her, implying a love triangle in the story because that was like Hunger Games, Twilight time frame. So it bothered me a lot because it's not representative of what's in the story. That did not serve Tamora Pierce or a potential readership to imply that that love triangle was significant or even existed. If you look at any covers, like I have Tamora Pierce books, just Googling Tamora Pierce books. I've got this best audiobook collection of these photoshopped arts that don't tell you anything about the story. If you look up Trickster's Choice, there's this sword in a circle brooch on the cover. What has nothing to do with the story, even the tiniest bit. At least this, it gives you an image of your main character. It's a little bit misleading still. What is this thing on her head? She does wear a wimple at one point because she has blue hair and she's covering it up. This is not blue hair that you see on the side, but nevertheless, what you see is a pale-skinned, green-eyed, light-haired, face-on female character. Does not misrepresent the story. The sequel to this also has a female bisected face that doesn't well represent the character that it's supposed to be, but it still tells you that it's a story about a dark-haired, straight at the camera, determined female, and it matches this set. The new cover art for it is two crossed swords in a crown. At best, that tells you that there's a conflict over the crown of the story, right? Without anything else. I don't love that. Because the cover is the first thing the readership sees, and decisions were made that... Not all of them were bad. I'm looking at like the Immortals ones. They each have like an animal face that makes sense for the story that it's telling. I don't love all of the reprints of the Protector of the Small One, but there's a couple that I like. Alana has the greatest variety because it's the one that's been around the longest. They've been around since the 80s, so it looks like each decade has at least two different illustrative versions that you could choose from. I haven't said too much about the Beka Cooper series. The Beka Cooper series, I that was one that I also only read one time when each book first came out. I didn't really love it. Like Melting Stones, it's first-person perspective, which differs from the third-person perspective that dominates all the rest of the Tortallan and Emmeline publications. And Beka Cooper is an older age range. She is more new adult. I think she's 18 in the first book, and I think she's 22 or 23 at the end of the third book, which is bumped up from the 10, 11 to 17, or 18 at most that the rest of the series kind of represent. Here's the third book in the Beka Cooper series. This is the worst of the cheap Photoshop covers. How much smaller is she than this girl who is her descendant? Or Kel. You have almost as much visual information between this cover as this cover. The background, the female character, what they're wearing, their animal companions, and Beka has cuffs because she's a cop. And Kel has a black eye because she was in a fight. So you have almost the same elements, but look how differently they're represented. Look how much more care went into something like this versus this. Look at the way her neck is twisted. You don't have to, you can't see. You can't see on this camera. If you care, you can look it up real quick and take a closer look at it and see what I'm talking about. It bothers me so much because these covers look so cheap and thoughtless, and these books are not cheap and thoughtless. These worlds are so intensely researched and incredibly well built. So that's why I'm even making this. It's not about the books, it's about these covers that don't represent the book that's inside. If I hadn't already known who Tamora Pierce was, I would not pick up this cover. And so we get further to, okay, this, not bad, talked about it. It's the character is consistent with previous representations of her. And you even have, what is this? This is Luvo. This is, I've mentioned Luvo, he's the mountain spirit. He's supposed to be a purple and green crystal, kind of shaped like a water-worn bear. It's a purplish lump on her back. It's better than nothing, but it does not. But it's better than nothing. Other than Tempests and Slaughter, that I haven't read, that looking at this browser image, it's a dripping feather. Okay. I feel like, okay, wow, okay, I'm looking at the cover of Tempests and Slaughter, and I feel like the cover is supposed to be implying something that comes up in the Immortals third book in the quartet. I don't know, I haven't read Tempests and Slaughter. I know 3 of the characters that are in it, I know the time frame that it's set, and I haven't read it. That's all I can say. Battle magic. Let's talk about this one first. Again, I don't feel like this one well represents what's inside. However, I don't feel like it misrepresents anything as opposed to some of the other covers that I have mentioned. You have a sword. I really questioned that initially once I first got on this whole, okay, am I going to make this video about these covers? I don't like this cover. What the heck is this sword here for? None of our characters really use a sword. The sword is wrapped in vines, though. And 2 of our main characters are plant mages, and they use their green growing ability to fight back. So I see this as representing perhaps the green growing ability wrapping around the Imperial sword. I can accept that it's not invested in an author who built a fantastic world, but it doesn't misrepresent the story inside. Now we get to the one that it's all about. The Will of the Empress. Again, I love this book. You can pick up this book without reading anything else in the series and have a good read, and most likely will be interested in reading the series that came before this capstone novel. This cover tells you almost nothing about what's inside. This sphere, at best, I'm guessing it's to represent the magical barrier wall that some countries with enough magic and enough power can call up as a barrier to armies. It's not a sphere. It's not this small. It's not here in this location that's represented by this cover. And that's a guess that I'm making. And maybe it's a greenhouse. But again, it's not around plants. And so let's talk about plants. We've got this grassy field. This is almost sage more than grass. There's the sea of grass that is a far distant conflict zone that isn't in this book. So it's not a greenhouse. At best, it's a barrier because it is around a castle. It's a broken castle. So we're protecting a broken castle. You've got these potently female eyes above everything else. The Will of the Empress. This is the only thing you kind of have tying together. Why would you, if you're watching this video, for whatever reason, I thank you very much for watching it. If you happen to be watching it with no knowledge of Tamora Pierce or these books that I'm lovingly complaining about, what would you think this book is about? The Will of the Empress. Eyes, broken castle, sphere, unhealthy looking grass situation. Yellow tone. Why is this yellow tone? This is not a yellow tone book. One of the main characters wear blue a lot. Her brother wears green a lot. Her sister also wears blue and black. Her other sister wears red and bronze. Yellow is not a theme in this. Why is this yellow? And to crown it all, for all the other publications, essentially, you can pick a different publication with a different art style. And some of them are better or worse, in my opinion. you have no other options than this art style for this cover. If you just look up Will of the Empress, this is what you get. What does this tell you about the book? Okay, I think I've made my point. The cover does not represent the quality of the story inside, and that bothers me for an author who is so prolific. We have 4 Song of the Lioness books. You have 4 Immortals books. You have 4 Protector of the Small books. You have 2 Trickster's books. You have 3 Beka Cooper books. You have 1 Tortall and Other Lands short story collection. You have 1 Tortall, A Spy's Guide, definitely a fan book. Like, it was edited and collected and written by Tamora Pierce, but it's for fans. If you have no familiarity with Tortall, you're not going to have any interest in A Spy's Guide. And lastly, you have Tempests and Slaughter. That is the Tortallan series. That adds up to 20, not 21, as I said in the previous video. And then you have the 4 quartet Circle of Magic, the 4 quartet Circle Opens, the 3 Circle Reforged collection, which makes 11, and 20, which makes 31 Tamora Pierce books with multiple different cover styles to choose from. Thank you for watching my ramble. I've spent all week, I guess, complaining about this Circle Reforged series in one way or another. So I suppose the next time I sit down, I should talk about, like, top 5 favorite things or something like that. Oh, and so, like, if this ramble was to your liking, subscribe if you want to see more rambles like this. All of it is in love because Tamora Pierce, like, I will always return to Tamora Pierce. I plan to just keep on going about Tamora Pierce. So come back for more of that. At some point, I'll ramble about writing of my own. And please do tell me if you have any familiarity with Tamora Pierce or, spoilers. Always spoilers for these books that were all published 6 or more years ago.